Hello, everyone. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Microsoft Sony acquisition because there are a lot of things we really need to talk about when it comes to this kind of thing. I haven't been talking about it enough because there's been so many interesting little tidbits that have come forward from the judge and from the investigations and from Sony and Microsoft's legal teams. Right? There have been a lot of interesting things, and I think a lot of people aren't really talking about most of it. And unfortunately, because I'm so busy with my personal stuff. I just released a book. I'm in the process of writing like three other books. I'm, promoting my brand. I'm doing all this stuff. Like, it's been difficult for me to like really follow the case as I should be. But I have picked up on something that I don't think a lot of people, YouTubers, have talked about or are really willing to admit, in that Microsoft has come out and actively accused Sony. Actually, I think they proved this, that Sony does pay for third party support to not come to Xbox and Nintendo consoles, particularly Nintendo consoles, right? This has been like an allegation that's been going around for quite some time. I've been throwing this around for quite a decade. I've seen people talk about like how Final Fantasy VII, Dragon Quest, Metal Gear Solid, they were all like paid exclusives and could easily have been like developed for N64 instead. But like in order to drive Nintendo and Sega out of the industry, Sony paid off a bunch of major third-party studios to jump ship and support PlayStation. PlayStation was not successful because the brand was so popular. It was successful because Sony threw like billions of dollars around to make it successful, right? They blew a bunch of money on these third-party studios to try and drive Nintendo out of the industry. And now, following this Xbox acquisition debacle, that has to a certain extent been admitted publicly that Sony does in fact pay for these kind of exclusives, right? In order to promote their brand and create this narrative that Nintendo isn't the mature, cool video game platform with all the cool third party games, and it's only a game for little children. Right. In order to create this narrative, they paid for these exclusives, and it's now that they're trying to prevent the Microsoft acquiring Activision situation that has come out into the limelight. It's become like more widely known just how reliant Sony is on these kind of partnerships, on these kind of exclusives, right? It like a decade ago, I think they were paying for like exclusive missions in Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty and stuff like that. They had like exclusive content, skins and stuff like that. Like that wasn't like that didn't just come out of the blue. It's because they pay for it, right? And that doesn't seem like a lot, but if Nintendo doesn't get the game at all and Xbox doesn't get that DLC, like the PlayStation 3 version is technically the best, at least to the eyes of like the casual consumer, right? Like unless you spend a lot of time like thinking and playing about these games, you don't realize that these PlayStation games are exclusive, aren't as good as the competition. You don't realize that Horizon Zero Dawn and The Last of Us and Uncharted like really can't hold a candle to like the kind of games that Nintendo and even Xbox are pointing out. Like I think I saw an interesting statistic about how Sony 70% of like PlayStation players like only play like something like 5 hours of COD a year, right? Like that's the that's their primary demographic. Like if they lose PlayStation, they're done. Like if they lose Call of Duty, they're done. Like PlayStation just cannot compete without these kind of third party deals. And with Microsoft acquiring all these major studios and making them exclusive, or at the very least not allowing them out on PlayStation, like we're reaching the point where the PlayStation brand is just going to be driven out of the industry. Because we're in an era where, these major movie games aren't really going to do well. They don't have any more third parties to leech off of, and the PlayStation hardware is becoming more and more obsolete. Back in the day, 20 years ago, like everybody I knew, oh, I got a PS2 because of the DVD player. Well, what about the games? What about the games? Like I can just get GTA. Like that's the mindset. Like people used to pick up this hardware based on like, the popular games that were coming out on it all the time, but also like the extra features. But more and more every console generation, it feels like those extra features are completely pointless. Like nobody really uses Xbox or PlayStation as like DVD players anymore, right? Nobody really cares all that much. They have like better devices that are more accessible, that are more easily replaced, that are more affordable. Like it's not really something that anybody does, right? I think going forward, we're going to see like more and more pushback against PlayStation. I think this is going to be the beginning of the end for them. Like, I think PlayStation will die because of this specific deal.